She was already laughing when I walked in. Not the polite kind of laugh you offer to strangers. This was the wild, open kind. The one that only comes when you know you're safe. When you think no one is watching. But I was watching. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. The client meeting in Boise was meant to go late. It didn't. I didn't text her. I thought I'd surprise her. The irony of that doesn't escape me now. The hallway light was off. Shoes in the usual place. Everything in the apartment looked like it always did. Perfectly arranged, perfectly quiet. Except for the laughter. Her laughter. And a man's voice. Smooth. Relaxed. Inside my apartment. I didn't barge in. I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe. I just stood in the hallway, outside the kitchen, listening. Something in me already knew not to interrupt. Not yet. She was saying something between bursts of laughter. Words low and fast, like secrets. I inched forward until I could see just enough. 2 glasses on the counter. 1 half-empty bottle of that overpriced vermouth she always said we couldn't afford. Her legs were tucked underneath her on the bar stool. Comfortable. Familiar. And then, the sentence. The sentence I will hear in my skull every night until I die. He thinks I'm healing. Isn't that adorable? More laughter. I just needed a safe place to hide while I figured things out. And he's soft. He won't fight. He folds. He folds. I stood there, holding the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping me upright. I wanted to walk away. I wanted to vanish. I wanted to scream. Instead, I did what I always do. Nothing. I backed out the way I came in. Quiet. Careful. Not because I respected her privacy, but because I didn't want them to know I'd heard everything. Because if she knew what I knew now, she wouldn't be laughing. And if I stayed even a second longer, neither would I. I didn't go to work the next day. Technically, I did. I logged in, clicked around, replied to 2 emails. But my body was just a coat rack for thoughts I didn't know how to carry. I must have stared at the same spreadsheet for an hour, the cursor blinking like it was mocking me. I kept hearing her voice. That exact inflection when she said I fold. She said it like it was charming. Like I was furniture. Like I was background. Around 2 p.m., I realized I hadn't moved from the couch. Still wearing yesterday's jeans, phone still face down on the armrest, unopened messages stacking quietly like dust. My body was buzzing with that awful, sick adrenaline, the kind you get when your brain thinks something's hunting you, but you can't see it yet. She wouldn't be home until 5:30. That was her gym then grocery night, like clockwork. She was a creature of habits, habits I thought I understood. I had exactly 3 hours to decide whether I wanted to pretend or pull the thread. I chose the thread. I started small. Opened her laptop, the one she never really let me use. No password. Either she trusted me or forgot to hide things. Emails were clean. Almost too clean. Like someone had vacuumed up their own tracks. But I wasn't looking for what she sent. I was looking for what she saved. And there it was, buried in a forgotten folder labeled personal_tax_stuff. Hidden like a dead thing in a drawer. A PDF. 1 page. No date. No title. Just text. If he finds out, I'll say he misunderstood. He always does. He assumes guilt in himself first. That's why it works. That's why I chose him. I don't want to lie, but I have to. He would collapse if I told him the truth. And I'm not here to pick up his pieces. I'm just here to land softly while I figure out where I'm actually going. I stared at it. Reread it. Read it again. My stomach turned. There was no name, no recipient. But I knew. I knew it was about me. Every sentence hit like a shovel to the spine. I felt hot, then cold, then nothing. She had mapped me, diagrammed me like a science project. Weak, self-blaming, pre-broken. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd studied how to do it without making a mess. That's what killed me the most. Not the affair, not the laughter, but the planning. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't emotion. This was engineering. I printed it, folded it neatly, slid it under her pillow, and then I left. Again, quietly. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. Small roads, big roads. I passed through 3 towns without remembering their names. I didn't want to talk to anyone. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I ended up at an old gas station 2 hours south, just outside of a town where my family used to camp when I was 12. I parked, got a stale sandwich from the cooler, sat on the curb, and just stared at the gravel. Everything felt dull, like my life had been wiped with a gray filter. I watched the sun slip lower through the cracked sign above the gas station roof, wondering if she'd found the note by now, wondering if she'd pretend not to understand what it meant. I was scared to check my phone, but I would. Eventually. Because now, she was the one who didn't know I was watching. And I wanted to see what someone like her does when the game flips. Even just a little. I didn't go back home that night. I told myself it was to give her space to react to the note. That was a lie. I just didn't want to see her face. I didn't want to hear her voice trying to shape what I knew into something softer. I knew her tactics. She'd turn it into a miscommunication. Weaponize my sensitivity. She'd wrap her betrayal in just enough ambiguity to make me doubt I'd even seen what I'd seen. And the worst part? Part of me knew I'd want to believe her. So I stayed in a motel that smelled like wet carpet and regret. The bedspread looked like it hadn't been washed since the Bush administration. I laid on top of it in my jacket, scrolling through the last 6 months of our texts, one by one, like a forensic pathologist dissecting a corpse. So many little clues that didn't register at the time. Tiny, invisible signs. Her sudden distaste for small talk. The nights she came home and immediately showered. The one time she said Joel, and then covered it with a cough and a laugh. And me, like a goddamn idiot, always giving her the benefit of the doubt. At 1:17 a.m., I finally checked my phone. 5 messages from her. The last one said, "Can you just tell me what this is?" Nothing else. No apology. No denial. No panic. Just confusion. The kind you use when you're trying to regain the upper hand. I didn't answer. I powered my phone off and stared at the motel ceiling for hours, replaying every conversation we'd ever had under a new filter, one where I was the mark. By morning, something had shifted in me. Not strength. Not clarity. Just a kind of numbness that made movement possible. I drove back home slowly, like a man heading into a burned-down house to see if anything was left worth saving. When I walked in, the place was quiet. She was at work, or pretending to be. I didn't care. I walked straight past the kitchen, the scene of the crime, into our bedroom. The bed was made. Of course it was. Her pillow was fluffed like nothing had ever happened. But the note I left was gone. Not acknowledged. Just gone. And then I noticed something. Her laptop. It was open. Screen glowing. No password screen. Like she'd forgotten to close it in her panic. I don't know what made me click on the photos folder. I wasn't expecting anything. But there it was. A hidden album. Titled Only with an asterisk. Inside, 43 photos. Some were just selfies. Some of her in outfits I'd never seen before. Some were mirror shots from what I now realize was a hotel bathroom. Same tile. Same timestamps. Several weekends in a row where she said she was visiting her sister. I clicked through them like I was peeling off layers of my own skin. And then I saw him. Joel. Shirtless. Smirking. Taking the picture himself. Her curled beside him like they were already in someone else's story. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the last image. It wasn't them. It was me. Sleeping. My body curled on the couch, wrapped in the blanket she gave me for our 2nd anniversary. A timestamp in the corner. 2:39 a.m. And the caption below it. Written in her notes app, still asleep. Still has no idea. My hands went ice cold. This wasn't just betrayal. This was performance. This was documentation. I stood up, suddenly aware that every item in our apartment had become foreign. The walls weren't walls. They were props. The couch wasn't furniture. It was a stage. And I was no longer part of the cast. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just started packing. Not my clothes. Not my toothbrush. Just the things I knew she would never think to check. My passport. My backup drive. My old phone. The key to the safety deposit box she didn't know existed. Because if I was being written out of the story, I wanted to leave on my own terms. And maybe, just maybe, write something back. I didn't leave right away. I wanted to. Every cell in my body screamed at me to grab my keys, burn the bridge, and never look back. But I've learned that the fastest exits leave the most behind. And there were still things here that belonged to me. Not just objects, but truths. Pieces of the story that hadn't surfaced yet. So I stayed. But I stopped playing house. I didn't confront her. That's what she'd expect. That's what she was prepared for. No. Instead, I leaned into my role. The soft one. The fool. The man too polite to raise his voice. I responded to her texts with dull, flat emojis. I asked how her day was. I offered to pick up oat milk. I acted like nothing had changed, because people only get careless when they think you're still asleep. She noticed, of course. People like her can't stand silence unless they're the one controlling it. 2 days after I found the photos, she asked me if I was feeling distant. I told her I was just tired. She said I should take a break from work. I nodded. She offered a shoulder rub. I let her. Every second of it felt like swallowing a mouthful of broken glass, but I let her. Because I needed her to believe I hadn't woken up yet. While she slept, I mapped everything. Her passwords, her browsing history, the secondary email address tied to her old phone account. I wasn't snooping. I was building a record, one she wouldn't see coming. Because the man she laughed about, the walking beige wall, he was watching now, and he was recording. I created a new folder on my cloud drive. Encrypted, hidden. I gave it the name Wedding Edits, because I knew she'd never look inside something so sentimental. Every photo, every chat log, every screen capture, saved. Organized. Archived. I wasn't planning to expose her. I wasn't planning to humiliate her. I didn't need justice. I needed proof. Why? Because I'd started to think about disappearing. Not dramatically. Not in flames. Just gone. She'd come home one day, and I wouldn't be here. My clothes, my books, my presents, deleted like a browser tab. She'd check the bathroom. She'd check the closet. She'd call. She'd panic. Not because she missed me, but because control only works if the puppet stays on the strings. I kept practicing. Little things. I started paying for groceries in cash so she wouldn't notice the bank shift. I created a second account at a credit union 20 miles out of town. I bought a prepaid SIM card and set up an alias email. I even visited a storage unit facility on my lunch break, one of those 24-hour access places that no one really watches. I signed a 6-month lease. No cameras inside the hallways. Perfect. Inside it now sits a duffel bag, 3 days' worth of clothes, a burner phone, old IDs, $2,000 in mixed bills, and one final letter, printed, sealed, unaddressed. Just in case I lose my nerve when the time comes. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Betrayal isn't just a heartbreak. It's an identity crisis. It's a quiet, crawling madness. You start to question everything. Not just what they said, but what you believed. What you let yourself believe. And maybe, deep down, I always knew I was convenient. A layover. A placeholder until the next version of her arrived. But knowing it doesn't make it easier to live with. So instead, I plan. I watch. I move carefully. Like someone defusing a bomb that already went off, trying to salvage what's left. Yesterday, I saw a message come through on her laptop again. She'd left it open, same as before. Joel, did he say anything yet? You said he was starting to catch on. She hadn't replied. Not yet. So I did. He always catches on too late. That's why it's easy. Then I shut the laptop and smiled for the first time in weeks. The beautiful thing about pretending to be oblivious is that people will fill in the silence for you. They can't stand the stillness. They project. They assume. And if you stay quiet long enough, they'll hand you the truth without realizing they've done it. After I replied to Joel from her laptop, I watched her carefully for the next 48 hours. I didn't hover. I didn't act strange. In fact, I was the most accommodating version of myself I'd ever been. I made her coffee in the morning. I told her she looked good when she left for work. I offered to do the grocery run. I smiled more. But behind my eyes, something else was forming. Not rage. I don't have that in me. What I had was colder. Slower. I wanted to unravel her from the inside, the way she'd done to me. But I didn't want revenge. I wanted understanding. I wanted to see what a liar looks like when they start to doubt their own mirror. It started with a story. One night, as we were having dinner, I casually told her about a woman I saw at the storage unit. I invented her entirely. Gave her a name, Molly. Said she drove a silver Jetta and stored vintage records in crates. Said she'd asked me for help lifting something and that we'd laughed about how heavy old vinyl can be. Anya tilted her head a little when I said it. Not jealousy. Not yet. But her smile was tighter than usual. She sounds cool, she said, pouring more wine than she usually would on a Tuesday. You talk to her often? I shrugged. Just ran into her twice, that's all. That night, she initiated sex for the first time in weeks. The next day, she baked banana bread and left a note by the coffee machine. Just because. Love you. The shift was subtle, but I saw it. I felt it. And something about it sickened me in a way I wasn't prepared for. Because now I wasn't just observing her betrayal. I was participating in it. I was pulling strings. I was becoming her. A week later, I left my phone unlocked on the couch with a fake message thread open between me and Molly. Nothing overt. Just 3 casual lines. Molly, that story you told me about your wife made me laugh so hard. You're too good to be stuck. Me? Don't say that. Molly, you know I'm right. I went to the bathroom and waited. When I came back, the phone had moved an inch. She never said a word about it. But she washed my laundry that night and folded it like we'd just gotten married. She left the TV off and asked about my day. She even massaged my shoulders while I sat at my desk, something she used to do before I became invisible. It should have felt like power. It didn't. It felt like rot. Because I wasn't healing. I wasn't reclaiming myself. I was just rewriting the script of the same performance. We were 2 liars now, orbiting a house built on bad silence. That weekend, she suggested we take a drive to the lake. A picnic, just the 2 of us. Said she felt like we were reconnecting. I agreed. I even helped pack the bag. Sandwiches. Grapes. The old Bluetooth speaker. She wore that yellow sundress I used to love, before I realized she'd worn it in one of the hotel photos with him. We sat by the water, pretending we were whole, laughing too loudly, telling stories we'd already told. At one point, she reached over and took my hand. I missed this, she said. I nodded. Me too. But in that moment, I realized something that made my stomach turn to ice. She wasn't saying she missed me. She missed who I used to be, the soft, blind version. The man she could fold into her lies like a towel in a drawer. And now that he was gone, she didn't love me. She just feared losing her audience. I looked at her, really looked at her, and wondered if I had ever truly known the person sitting across from me. If I had just fallen in love with the idea of being loved. Later that night, while she slept with her hand on my chest like a claim, I opened my laptop and added one more file to the folder she'd never find. A voice recording. Just 5 minutes of our picnic. Nothing damning. But the way she spoke, careful, deliberate, fragile, it sounded like someone clinging to a version of reality that was slipping through her fingers. And in a way it was. Because I wasn't hers anymore. Not really. Not ever again. I started disappearing before I left. Not all at once, just in slices. I'd stop responding to group texts. Cancel plans I had no intention of attending. Skip weekly calls with my brother. Ignore emails that didn't require urgent replies. It's strange how easy it is to vanish when no one's looking for you. You stop being a person and become a placeholder with a heartbeat. Present in space, absent in meaning. At home, I made small, surgical changes. I moved 2 shirts from my closet to the storage unit. Then 3 books. Then a camera she'd forgotten I owned. I deleted myself from our shared streaming accounts. Removed my name from the lease under the pretense of credit maintenance. Took down a framed photo of us and replaced it with abstract art. She never noticed. Or if she did, she said nothing. That's the thing about people who lie well. They assume silence means success. She'd grown warmer lately. Sweeter. She touched my arm more when she spoke, laughed softer, even started cooking again. It wasn't guilt. It was control. She could feel the air changing and thought closeness might seal the cracks. But affection from someone who studied how to dismantle you hits different. You never know if it's real or just another performance in a carefully controlled script. Meanwhile, I was testing the waters. I took a short trip for work, a small tech conference 2 towns over. In truth, it was just an excuse to leave and see how she reacted. I booked the hotel under a pseudonym, paid cash, turned off my phone after the first night. When I returned, she was unusually quiet. No accusations. No questions. Just wide eyes and a faint, almost imperceptible tremble in her voice when she asked, "Did you miss me?" I lied and said yes. She smiled too quickly. She knew something had changed, but she couldn't name it. And that's what made it dangerous. Fear with no shape makes people paranoid. It makes them unravel themselves, just trying to guess what thread you're pulling. I'd learned that from her. In the evenings, I'd sit on the couch with her, pretending to watch whatever show she picked, while in my mind I rehearsed the exit. It wouldn't be cinematic. There'd be no confrontation. Just a Thursday morning where she'd wake up to an empty side of the bed and realize everything had been an illusion. My keys on the counter. My name off the Wi-Fi. The voicemail I'd recorded in advance playing softly when she called. I'm safe. I've chosen a different life. Please don't contact me. But I wasn't ready to hit play yet. There were still puzzle pieces missing. And then, as if fate wanted to twist the knife one more turn, I found something new. It happened late one night, after she fell asleep with her phone tucked under her pillow. She'd been drinking just a bit too much wine. The same pattern every time she started feeling the weight of her own guilt. I waited until her breathing shifted into the steady rhythm of deep sleep. Then I carefully slid the phone out and checked the app she always forgot to clear. Notes. And there it was. A draft. Unsent. Untitled. I don't know what he knows. I can't tell anymore. Some days I think he's looking through me. Others, he holds me like he used to, and I wonder if maybe I imagined the distance. But I didn't. I know I didn't. He's changed. There's something behind his eyes now. Like he's watching me from the other side of a window. I keep dreaming he disappears. That I wake up and he's gone. No note. No call. Nothing. Just emptiness where he used to be. And the worst part? I'm not even scared. I'm relieved. I put the phone down, gently, like it was a detonator. Sat in the dark, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what I was supposed to feel. Relief? Rage? Closure? I felt none of it. Only validation. Because now I knew. I wasn't projecting. I wasn't overreacting. She saw it too, the shift in me. And part of her welcomed it. Because she never loved me. She loved the role I played. And now that the mask was off, she didn't want me anymore. The irony? She was waiting for me to leave. Just too afraid to be the one to do it. That was the final betrayal. Not the affair. Not the laughter. Not the lies. But the cowardice. She burned everything down and waited for me to sweep the ashes. And I would. But not the way she expected. I stopped leaving traces. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even noticeable, unless you were looking with forensic intensity, which I knew she wasn't. Because by now, I'd trained her into complacency. I'd leaned so far into predictability that even the strange had become expected. She no longer asked why I got home late or why I was up early. She'd given up trying to read me, assuming, like always, that I would eventually explain myself. But I wouldn't. Every day, I erased more of myself from the infrastructure of our life. I called the bank and removed myself from the joint account under the guise of personal budgeting. I forwarded my mail to a P.O. box she didn't know existed. I changed my emergency contact at work. I even updated the GPS in my car to clear its memory weekly. One day she'd try to track me and find nothing but dead ends and partial footprints. Still, I played the part. I kissed her on the forehead when I left in the morning. I sent her "thinking of you" texts mid-afternoon. I made dinner on Fridays like I used to. But now I cooked recipes I knew she didn't love, meals she always pretended to enjoy. I wanted to see how far she'd take the performance. She ate every bite, smiling. I smiled too. Inside, I was already gone. There was a moment, just a small one, when I almost said something. We were in bed, both pretending to read, and she glanced over and said, "You feel different lately." I looked at her. "Is that bad?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, just different." Then she reached for my hand like it still meant something. I let her take it. Let her hold it. Let her believe. Because that's what this was really about now. Not escape. Not even revenge. It was about giving her time to memorize the version of me she thought she still had, so that when I left, it wouldn't be a clean break. It would be a haunting. Every drawer she opened, every misplaced photo, every silence in the apartment would be a question she couldn't answer. And the beauty of it? There'd be no final fight. No truth screamed into the air. No shattered plates or teary apologies. I'd vanish the way trust does, slowly, then all at once. I left decoys. A half-written note in my desk drawer that says, "I should have said something sooner, but I didn't want to hurt you." A scheduled text message, set to send a day after I'm gone. "Please don't follow me. This isn't about punishment. It's about survival." A locked USB drive labeled "wedding footage." Empty, of course. But just the label alone would tempt her into obsessing. That's the point. You don't destroy someone by yelling. You do it by leaving space and letting their mind fill it in. She wouldn't find the real letter. The one I'd already mailed to someone she doesn't even know exists, my old friend Jude, who moved to Oregon 5 years ago after a breakdown. We'd lost touch, but he owed me a favor. A big one. Enough to keep a room ready and ask no questions. Because when the day comes, there will be no suitcase. No last goodbye. Only a credit card cancellation, a lease transfer, and a one-way bus ticket to anywhere that smells nothing like here. I'm not proud of this. Let me be clear. This isn't some twisted victory lap. It's damage control. It's me trying to put out a fire without feeding it oxygen. But maybe, just maybe, it's also the only power I've ever had. the ability to leave without being asked to. And for the first time, the thought of being forgotten doesn't terrify me. It comforts me, because she will never get closure. She will look for me in every soft man she meets and wonder why they don't disappear the way I did. And that's when she'll realize the cruelest part of betrayal isn't being left. It's realizing the person you manipulated learned how to vanish better than you ever did. The day I left, it rained. Not the dramatic, thunderclap kind they use in movies to symbolize rebirth, just a soft, indifferent drizzle that made the sidewalk shine and the air feel clean. It was fitting, really. Nothing loud. No scenes. No slammed doors. Just water falling from the sky like the past slipping away. I woke up before sunrise. She was still asleep, curled into the blanket like it loved her more than I did. I watched her for a moment, not with bitterness, but with a strange kind of gratitude. For all the lies, all the slow-burning heartbreak. Without them, I'd still be asleep too. I didn't take much. Just a backpack. My documents, a worn hoodie, a second pair of shoes, and a small moleskine notebook I hadn't written in since before we met. Inside it were little thoughts from a version of me I'd buried, things I used to care about, things I stopped chasing once I started orbiting someone else's idea of love. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to. Every part of me she still thinks she owns was already long gone. At 6:12 a.m., I boarded a bus heading north. No final look back. No cinematic music swelling in my head. Just a window seat, a lukewarm coffee, and the first real breath I'd taken in years. The road stretched out in front of me like a question finally being asked. I didn't have answers, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the silence that came with that. I let the town disappear behind me, 1 mile at a time. By noon, I crossed into a new city. By dusk, I had a key to a small room above a bookstore run by an old man named Walter who smelled like printer ink and secondhand wool. He didn't ask questions, just handed me the key and said, "Welcome to the quiet." I smiled. Later that night, I sat on the floor beside the window, watching the rain fall against the glass, pen in hand, notebook open. I wrote exactly one sentence. I'm not broken. I was just misused. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I believed it. The next morning, I walked to the lake near the edge of town. The air smelled like pine and possibility. Kids were feeding ducks. Someone was playing a guitar badly on a bench. A woman in a yellow scarf smiled at me for no reason. I smiled back. I didn't know who I'd become yet. I didn't know what came next. But I knew who I wasn't anymore. I wasn't a placeholder. I wasn't a project. I wasn't the golden retriever waiting by the door, hoping not to be abandoned. I was mine now. And in the quiet, in the stillness of a morning that belonged to no one else, I realized something so simple I almost laughed. Healing doesn't always look like a victory. Sometimes, it just looks like getting out of bed and not wanting to go back.